This is a warning. Don't take things that aren't yours. My mistake as a teenager has ruined my life. At the age of 16, I moved into a new house with my family, since my father was offered a new job that paid him much more than what he was making before. We had been in poverty for years, so when the pipeline company called him, he instantly accepted. 2 weeks later, we moved from my hometown in Georgia. I will admit, it was really difficult saying goodbye to the friends I basically grew up with since birth. Mother reassured me it was better this way, so I finally loaded my belongings into the moving truck. Our new home was about 2 hours away from our original location, so this meant I'd have to get used to a new remote place. I teared up as I saw the town's greeting sign. Welcome to Clamville, where memories are made. How ironic, I never knew this place would be my first week in hell. I knew then I'd miss my original house every day. My hometown was all I ever knew. All I could see was nothing but dirt roads and old homes. It felt like a ghost town. But hey, what did I know? Maybe I'd love the new place. My poor, naive self. The house we moved into wasn't much to look at. The outside was painted crimson with a black roof and a black door to match. The inside had 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and everything a house usually would. A few days after living there, I realized we had an attic because of a chain hanging from the washroom. Me being excited, I immediately told my mother. I was always curious in my youth. She tilted her head in confusion and said, "The owner never mentioned that." My father always had ladders because of his previous job with the logging company, so we searched the truck and found one in the back. He had taken his work vehicle that day, so it was never unusual for his beat-up truck to be here. My mother set up the ladder and began to walk on it, but then stopped halfway in pulling the chain. "Ma, what are you doing? Pull it down so I can see what's in there." "I don't feel like this is safe. The previous homeowner obviously didn't tell us it was there for a reason. Maybe it has some safety hazards. He might have left old things up there, like antiques or something." She inhaled deeply and let out a long sigh. "Fine, but if you get hurt, you'll never be allowed up there again. I mean it," she said sternly as she walked back down the ladder. In my excitement, I rushed and pulled the rusty chain so that the entrance was fully exposed. A cloud of faintly gray dust hit me in the face and I coughed. My mother complained about the mess, but that was the least of my worries. I climbed myself the rest of the way in. The atmosphere felt eerie. "Do you see anything?" Mother hollered. "Ma, I haven't even turned on the light yet." I yelled in response. I felt around the attic and flicked a light switch, and the attic lit up. The floral wallpaper in the room was peeling off, and the floor was in need for a sweeping. Other than that, it seemed in fairly good condition. In my surprise, nothing much was there besides a few boxes of porcelain plates, teacups, and occasional old frilly dresses in piles on the floor. Everything was caked in gray dust. From the looks of it, no one had been up here for years. My mother yelled once again, and it caused me to jump. "Everything okay?" she yelled. "Yes, Ma, I promise. There isn't much up here." I yelled back with a slight tone of annoyance. She always worried too much, I thought. I paced up and down the floor to examine my findings, and that's when I saw it. A beautiful old mirror with bright gold edges. It resembled a magic mirror from all of those cheesy Disney movies I loved as a little girl. I grabbed it immediately. I just couldn't stop myself. It wasn't mine, but I wanted it. Its looks lured me in. I admired the gold and beautiful shape. I wanted it. The owner left it, so it was technically mine, right? It was the size of my torso, so it was easy to carry. I grabbed the mirror, turned off the light, and with caution, headed back down the ladder while clinging to it. Mother met me at the last step. "What's that?" she asked. "It's an old mirror, and it's beautiful. I really want to put it in my new room," I said with joy. She examined it. "It needs some cleaning, but sure, I guess so. But just remember we don't know whose it is," she said. As soon as Mother finished her sentence, I squealed with excitement, Even in my teen years, the littlest things brought me happiness, as if I was 4. I told you there was at least something up there, Ma. I ran to the bathroom with the mirror in hand to find Windex to clean it. As I was grabbing the cleaner from under the sink, I felt an extremely cold presence behind me. I wrote it off as the house was old and probably needed some insulation work done. I headed to the kitchen table and began scrubbing the glass. The smudges just weren't coming up. I began to get aggravated and used different cleaning chemicals, even baby wipes. It refused to come up from the glass and my excitement faded slightly. I went to Mother's bedroom to go find her and ask her for more solutions. Ma, the fingerprints won't come up, I said, defeated. Well, it is really old, honey. It could be staining from inside of it, she explained, looking up from her book. She was always seen with some type of novel in her hand. I sighed. Well, should I just hang it up as it is? I don't see why not. It's clean now. All right then. I closed the door as I left. I felt my gut twist and turn as I turned my room's doorknob. Little did I know then, it was my subconscious warning me for what was to come. I headed to my room and decided to hang it up over my bed. I sat on the end of my mattress and admired it once more, even though it has a few smudges. I even looked at it as I fell asleep that night. To my dismay, I had my first nightmare of a cryptid crawling out from the walls and grabbing my throat. The hands burnt as soon as it touched my skin. I couldn't scream. I was paralyzed. The figure was cloudy gray and had such dark eyes. As its eyes met mine, I finally woke up in a panic. The smell of the thing is forever burned into my nose. I was covered in sweat, and my hair was matted against my face. I went to the bathroom and immediately took a hot shower. I always hated how sweat felt. I didn't go back to bed that night, stayed up and drew in my sketchbook the whole time. I didn't want to ever have that nightmare again, and I thought it would pass. I even prayed. I checked my dim light computer screen and it read 8 a.m. I got up and made myself some fried eggs. Mother woke up from the smell and sleepily walked into the kitchen. "You're awake early," she yawned. "Haha, yeah, I was hungry." I decided not to tell her about my nightmare. Knowing her, she'd blame it on the YouTube videos I watch. Is father already gone? I didn't hear him leave. Yeah, you know how his job is. I miss him, Ma. I know, I do too. We ate at the kitchen table without saying a word to each other. The move was impacting us both. Father came home at 11 at night now and always left at 7 in the morning while I was sleeping. He had weekends off, but when he had spare time, he'd usually rest since his job was hard on his back. I knew I'd been enrolled into a new high school in a few months after the summer was over, and I was scared to leave Mother all alone. She didn't do well when she was stir-crazy. The past few days after felt like a fever dream. I spent less and less time in my room. As a teenager, that's never a bad thing, but I noticed any time I was in there, I'd catch myself zoning off, looking at the mirror. I kept having the same nightmare. It was repetitive nightly, and it began to drive me crazy. I was desperate enough to begin asking for help on Reddit, Discord, online chat rooms, you name it. They all asked me a recurring question. Do you have any mirrors in your room? At the time, I thought it was such a stupid and irrelevant question. I eventually sent someone a picture of it in a private chat, and they told me I needed to burn it and began rambling about negative attachments. I nervously laughed at the text. Burn a mirror. That sounded ridiculous. I laughed to myself and picked up the gorgeous mirror from my light brown wall. I gazed at it to see if this person was truly crazy, and that's when it hit me. The smudges look like it's on the inside. I was in shock. I had so many questions running through my head, like a fight-or-flight response. There was no way fingerprints could be inside a mirror, right? I kept reassuring my mind and told myself I was overthinking it. I surely had to be paranoid from the lack of sleep. I went to bed, and the dream repeated itself once again. The thing completely devouring me. I woke up. I had enough and cracked. I told my mother everything. She didn't believe a word I said. Though, in her defense, she never was the one to believe in negative energies or anything paranormal. Her denying it was anything to do with ghosts kind of eased my fears. Though the nightmares continued, I was finally able to get more sleep. I became numb to it as I knew what would happen. One night in particular, I awoke from the same dream, and my throat was dry as if it was caked with flour. I brushed my teeth to get the sensation off my tongue, and I spit out pure black. I opened my mouth wide enough to see every tooth and saw it. To my horror, my mouth had a thin layer of dust on the tops of my gums. I rinsed out my mouth and cried on the bathroom floor for what it felt like. Hours. Something was wrong, so very wrong. Mother kept denying my claims and Father was never at home to give me comfort. I picked myself up and decided then and there I had to get rid of the mirror. I was going to smash it into a million pieces. Its gorgeous petite shape was a wolf in sheep's clothing. I sat in the living room and watched an old Looney Tunes rerun until I fell asleep. Not long enough to have the dream, of course, because I woke up to the sound of someone in the kitchen. It was my father. I stood up from the couch. "Can I hug you before you go to work?" "You know I'd never deny one of your hugs, kiddo, but why did you sleep on the couch?" he said, as he wrapped me in a bear hug. I smelled the old spice on his clothes. I haven't had one of those embraces since we moved. I always adored my father growing up. I ignored his question about why I was sleeping in the living room. Have a good day at work. I was just tired. I didn't want him to worry or feel like this was his fault. He was trying his best for us, and I knew that. "Thank you, kid," he said with a smile. He then walked out the front door. I'm glad I finally saw his face. It felt like ages. It was one of these moments I wished he had his old job again. Then I remembered all the times we had no money for food or water. It was better this way, I kept telling myself. I finally walked back to my bedroom and seeing the mirror flooded me with absolute rage. I grabbed the damn thing off my wall. I walked out into the front yard and I smashed it, picked it up and kept throwing it on the gravel. I hated it. I now hated how it looked, the pain it caused me and the nightmares it brought. I beat it until it was just the gold lining. I left it on the dirt ground and stared at it. I knew I'd have a lot of explaining to do to my mother. In that split moment, I felt a weight being lifted off my shoulders. It was over. I could be joyful once more and enjoy my new home with my mother. With relief, I walked back into the living room. Examining my hands, I found that there was a glass shard, so I brought myself to the sink and washed my hands. I took a deep breath and stepped back into my bedroom, my once no sanctuary. But there it was again, the mirror, back into its original form on the wall. I couldn't believe it. I ran back outside and saw that even the shards of glass in the grass were gone. Since that day, it's followed me everywhere along with the nightmares. Every house I've moved to since adulthood. It's been there despite me purposely leaving it. I regret finding it so beautiful and wanting it to be mine. I just can't escape it. Growing up since that, my mother never believed me when I'd cry to her about the dreadful thing. It was hard making friends in my new town because I was scared of having anyone come over to my house. I feared the mirror would follow them too. I stayed to myself and would look for any reason to stay away from home. I believe this dreaded curse may follow me past death. The worst part of this experience is the feeling of pure insanity. Everyone telling me I'm crazy. I live every day wondering if I've lost my mind. It tortures me mentally and I feel so alone. All I have now is my reflection in that fucking mirror. So take my warning and remember, curiosity killed the cat.